Hello and welcome to today's webinar, NextGen Desktop as a Service Solution Designed for Multi-Cloud. Today's event is brought to you by Nutanix and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is David Davis. I'm a partner at Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for today's event. Before I introduce you to our expert presenter, I want to remind you that we want this to be an educational event. So use that questions box there in the GoToWebinar control panel. Ask all your questions, and we'll be doing a dedicated Q&A session at the end of today's event. We also have a Tango $300 gift card that we'll be awarding to one lucky attendee on today's live event. Tango gift cards can be exchanged for gift cards at all the popular retailers, restaurants, places like Apple, Best Buy, places like that. So that card can be used just about anywhere. If you're watching this event on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. The full prize terms and conditions can be found at events.actualtechmedia.com. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to today's presenter. That is Mr. Ruben Sprite, Senior Technologist at Nutanix. Ruben, great to have you on again.
Yep, thanks.
Well, I know Ruben has a really cool presentation, and we're going to spend a lot of time in demo here. So let me change presenter over to you, Ruben.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, double checking. David, you see my screen, right? Presentation screen.
I do see your screen. Yeah, take it away.
Good. Yeah, will do. Thanks. Well, thanks for joining. It's a pleasure to spend time with you and explain more about desktop as a service so that you become the expert in Frame in less than 1 hour. My name is Ruben. I'm a technologist at Nutanix, as already mentioned. I'm former Frame CTO. I'm active for many years in the end user computing industry, and happy to spend time to demo Frame, to explain the why, to explain what Frame is in more technical detail, explain use cases, answer questions. We'll see how that goes. And if you have questions, if you have feedback, you can use the options in GoToWebinar to ask questions, to chat, and David will take a look at that, and we'll jump in where it applies. I like to get my hand, and in this case also my feet, dirty. I'm a technologist. I like to, I would say, play, air quotes, play with technology and use technology in the context of end user computing to inform customers, inform partners, and yeah, just help out customers in end user computing industry. So what you will learn: desktop as a service, VDI, Nutanix, Frame, use cases, technology behind the scenes, things like that. That's what you will learn. It will be an interesting ride. I have quite some content to share and also some great demos I prepped as well. So imagine you can use any device with just an HTML5 browser. And you can log in with a modern identity system, and with that you have access to all Windows apps you can run normally. Can be high-end graphics, can be resource intensive, can be client server, can be Office productivity app. If the application runs on Windows, you can run these apps in your browser. And that's what this demo, and this is like a live environment. This is in this case a full screen session of my Chrome browser window. This interface, this virtual desktop interface, is running in my browser. Nothing installed, no clients, no agents, no plugin is installed on my machine. And these apps are available. I can just run these apps. Let's see, I already started Inventor, which is a workstation application, like a beefy application. The virtual machine behind the scenes is in this case running in public cloud. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I can just move this this engine, plain engine, just move this around, do photorealistic rendering, launch Photoshop, launch like Office productivity applications, use browsers like this one here, and even run graphic intensive, in this case WebGL, so OpenGL for web application in my browser. This, like this car configurator, car visualizer, is running at 60 frames per second on my physical monitor. You can see it here. That's why I added this one here. You can see it's 60 frames per second. It's tough to see what is happening on your end through GoToWebinar, but that's why you see this is 60 frames per second, so extremely fluent on my end. If I just move this car around, or if I play a video at 4K resolution, things like that, that is extremely smooth on my end. Why is that so smooth? Because we have our own remoting protocol. We don't use RDP or VNC or PC over IP or any other remote display protocol. This is the Frame remoting protocol, which is really built for HTML5, high-end graphics, high frame rate, can leverage GPUs when the graphical processor unit is available. And when there's no GPU available, we use the CPU to do the encoding of the Frame remoting protocol. So bottom line, you could say if you have apps you want to run on any device, Windows applications, could be very modern applications, can be maybe classic legacy applications like Flash or Silverlight, or maybe a legacy browser platform, whatever that is, you can just run these apps through the Frame platform, including printing, including cut and paste, including microphone, including high fidelity audio playback. That's all part of the Frame solution, even including multi-monitor, if that's the approach you have in mind. All running in the browser. Nothing installed, no client, no agent, no plugin. What about printing? What about accessing other file services or file shares? Printing can be done through like network printing, normally Windows. Pretty straightforward, just set up your print queue, print server, follow your printing environment, and ready to roll. But if you want to print to your local endpoint, that is fine as well. We are able to connect to print to local defined printer objects as well. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of understanding what you can do with Frame. So run any Windows application in your browser. Nothing installed in that browser, no client, no agent, no plugin. And you can run high-end graphics, resource-intensive workstation applications, or maybe simple, basic Windows productivity or legacy applications. Let's move to the other side of Imagine. So this side of Imagine was really a demo, or a very brief demo, of the user experience. What if you want to know what the admin experience is? How does the interface from an IT professional or from the IT department looks like? So this interface is the Frame dashboard, the Frame admin interface. This is the interface where you colleagues, managed service providers, system integrators, where you will install, license, configure the end user applications like Photoshop or Blender or Inventor, the applications I just used. This is the interface you use. You define capacity here on a capacity. You define launchpads, which is a web interface the end user will use to launch, to access these apps or to access these desktops. But there's also another interface, which I really briefly want to highlight. So click on Ruben, click on admin. And this interface is the super admin interface. Frame is a cloud service, and from day one, the cloud service is multi-cloud and multi-tenancy in mind. So when we designed the solution, multi-cloud and multi-tenancy were part of the design criteria. All these names you see here are tenants of Frame accounts. And there could be 1, 10, 100,000, 10,000 users using that particular Frame account, that particular tenant. So this account, AWS EU, was the account I just used for a demo purpose. But I just want to explain what happens when I create a new Frame account. I select the right organization. If you're an MSP or an enterprise or an SI, maybe you have a layered approach where you want to have different organizations with different Frame accounts for your customers. That's where Frame fits really well. I select my test organization right now. We'll call it AC, Actual Tech Production. Let's see, use Australia as an example. Siri kicks in here. Let's move that. I select the cloud provider I want to use. Frame is able to support multiple clouds, both public cloud, Azure, Amazon, Google, or Nutanix ISVs, so on-premises or co-location, modern data center. In this case, I want to use Azure. I want to use a data center. Let's see, use Australia East. I click Next. I select the OS I want to use. I want to use Windows 10. I want to use a little bit more beefier machine as the master machine. I confirm that I have the right licenses, and I click Next, and I click Create. And what you've seen in, I don't know, I didn't clock, but a couple of minutes, is me creating a new tenant using, in this case, Azure in the Australian region. And in roughly 8-9 minutes, a new tenant is completely configured and deployed. In this case, I'm using my own Azure subscription, but like 9 out of 10 customers want to use their own Azure subscription. You want to use your subscription, and you connect your subscription. That's one step you do. That takes, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 minutes you do, and then you can start provisioning new Frame accounts like I just did. There it is. It is provisioned. It is created, and now the process, and I will explain the process in more detail when I go back to a little bit more to the presentation mode. Now the process of adding applications, connecting the identity system to this account, defining capacity, defining launchpads. And these simple steps is what you can see here. There's no 6-day training course or Frame. It's really intuitive. It's really simple to consume and to use. And yeah, then you can just invite your customers, you can invite your students, you can invite your partners to start using these Frame-powered Windows applications or Frame-powered Windows desktops. So that was the second imagine. Imagine you can just, like this, spin up anywhere in the world new Frame accounts, all controlled and all orchestrated by the Frame control plane. And that's indeed welcome to Nutanix Frame, or welcome to Nutanix Frame. Nutanix Frame is part of Nutanix, obviously. Nutanix acquired my company a little bit more than a year and a half ago. And end-user computing is in Nutanix DNA. When Nutanix as company started roughly 10 years ago, end-user computing workloads, so VDI, virtual apps, and virtual desktops, were one of the important workloads running on Nutanix hyperconverged infrastructure. It solves many challenges historically with virtual apps and desktops, like scalability and user experience and complexity. Hyperconverged platform is really suited for on-premises VDI, virtual apps, and virtual desktop workloads. And there's a strong relationship, strong partnership with Citrix. And also there are many customers on the VMware side who are using VMware end-user computing on Nutanix. But with Frame, that's the right side of this picture. You see that there's desktop as a service, DaaS, with one-click desktop as a service platform for multi-cloud workloads. You see me, well, it was not exactly one click, but maybe a couple of clicks. I just deployed a complete new Frame account, a complete new environment. In this case, Azure, but I could pick AWS, I could pick GCP, I could also pick AHV. And the same interface, the same control plane is able to handle that. And that's the approach, and that's the time we'll spend in this webinar to talk about desktop as a service with Nutanix Frame. So Frame, in essence, is a cloud service. It's not software you download; it's a service you consume. And this service is handling all the, I would say, plumbing, all the stuff needed to run apps and desktops. It's a remoting protocol, it's a broker, it's a security service, it's capacity management, it's central image management, it's user profile containerization, it's policies, there is analytics, there is APIs, and all multi-cloud and multi-tenant. I would say that complete package is what you consume on a user basis, named user or concurrent user, with, if required, flexible term as well. And the only thing you need from an end user perspective is a browser to consume, to run these virtual apps and desktops. And of course, you need infrastructure to actually execute these applications. So the frame control plane is like the one element, and the other element is the infrastructure to run apps and desktops. So when I was deploying one frame account in Azure Australia, that's the infrastructure to run my virtual applications or my virtual desktops. In this case, it was Azure Australia, but it could be Azure, Google, AWS, or Nutanix HV on premises as well. This highlights actually what I already explained. So the frame control plane, the frame broker, is a service we operate. It's something you consume, like you consume other cloud services like Office 365 or Google services, or maybe Okta or Azure AD, or maybe Spotify, or maybe Netflix. These are all cloud services you consume, and Frame is a cloud service with focus to deliver Windows apps and desktops to anyone in the world. And these elements are metering, app and desktop management, user profile, and personas, storage integration. Didn't talk about that, so it might be good to briefly explain that. Storage is important because apps by itself are, I would say, great, but apps really shine when they connect with data. It's great to launch Photoshop, but if I am not able to store or to retrieve files, yeah, doesn't matter that much, right? So with the storage elements here in this picture, we build our own native integration with OneDrive, Dropbox, Box, and Google Drive. Of course, you can also install the client components of these vendors or other vendors. Of course, you can also integrate with existing file services or file shares. We can use Nutanix Files, you can use Azure File Services or Benzura, Nosuni, whatever the storage platform is, we can leverage that. Capacity management means increase and decrease capacity based on demand, especially in public cloud, super important. And user experience is king. That's why I started this presentation with a user experience demo. So you can see that Frame in a browser is able to run high-end graphics in a browser. You might wonder, like, wow, I've seen this browser story before because other vendors in the VDI and desktop as a service space also have browser access, which is correct. But for others in this space, the browser is the backup plan, like plan B. For Frame, this is the primary platform to run apps and desktops. So we put all our engineering effort, development effort into that browser engine to make sure that it really delivers a great user experience. And the IaaS abstraction is the connection to Azure, the connection to AWS, the connection to GCP, and the connection to Nutanix HV on premises. So that the control plane, the Frame, the broker, the Frame service is able to spin up, delete, create, suspend, like VMs on demand. So basics, any app, any storage, any infrastructure, talked about that, and any browser to leverage to use different applications. This is a picture to, I would say, highlight the control plane. Control plane has different functions, as I already mentioned, the broker, the launchpad, the admin dashboard, things like that. And this picture highlights the multi-cloud approach. On the left side, you see that the control plane can communicate directly with IaaS, infrastructure as a service APIs. And on the right side, you can see that the control plane, through the Cloud Connector Appliance, an API proxy and API gateway, can communicate with Nutanix Prism Central. This is a good picture to briefly highlight the three different interfaces. The launchpad, the user interface to launch apps and desktops, the admin dashboard, the admin interface to do day-to-day activities, and the super admin interface. You already saw two of them. The launchpad you've not seen because I already had my session running, but it's just a web interface. I click on app or I click on desktop. Like here, if I click on the icon desktop, then yeah, a full Windows desktop will be displayed and run in my browser window. If I just click on an application like Power BI desktop, like this one here, instead of a full Windows desktop, I only see the application running in my browser window. This one is good to spend a little bit of time on this one here. So what you see here is 5 steps to, I would say, to get up to speed with Frame, but also to, from A to B or from 1 to 5 is set up Frame, and each element is good to briefly explain what it means. So it always starts with the center one, the SaaS Frame. That is a subscription. That's a user-based subscription. Can be named users, can be concurrent users. It's good to have that option as well. Of course, depending on use case. If you're in education or maybe in healthcare, and you have like in education 70,000, so 70,000 students, but only, air quote, 2,000 of them are concurrent using Frame-powered Windows applications, then it's a great asset in a toolbox to be able to support concurrent user subscription. You don't want to pay 70,000 named user licenses in such a scenario. You just want to pay 2,000 concurrent user license or concurrent user subscriptions. So that's this one here, the control plane, the service frame. And the first thing you do, you connect the infrastructure to your subscription. Public cloud, on-premises. If you pick Azure as the example, you define, it's called application registration. It's really well documented on the public documentation side on Frame. Takes a couple of minutes. You define application registration, which makes the Frame control plane, it makes it possible that the Frame control plane can communicate with your Azure or your Amazon or your Google subscription. If you use on-premises, you deploy the Cloud Connector appliance. It's built into Prism Central. Takes a couple of minutes and then good to go. That's the first step. The second step is you connect your identity system to the Frame subscription you've set up. So you use, for instance, Azure Active Directory, or maybe Okta, or Ping, or Google, whatever the SAML2 or OAuth system is. You connect that to the Frame subscription, so that you can use that identity platform to connect users or to connect admins to the Launchpad or to the dashboard. Then you deploy a Frame account, like I did here. This one here is deployed, and then you start onboarding applications. You bring your own apps. So you install, your colleagues, your service provider, your system integrator will install these applications. That can be done manually. In an on-premise environment, you can bring your own image. You can use automation tools like Chocolate or maybe SCCM or any other tool to install these applications in the master machine. So we'll go back to my admin interface here. This interface, this sandbox, if I start a session, there are no apps installed because your colleagues are responsible for installing, configuring, updating, licensing your applications. That's what the third step is. That can take hours, that can take minutes, it can take days, depending on which apps you want to bring to the Frame, to your Frame's account. If it's automated or if it's manually or maybe both, that's what's happening on the third step. The fourth step is connect with files, which can be a couple of things. Can be cloud storage like OneDrive or Dropbox, Google Drive or Box. As I mentioned earlier, we build our own system to connect with that. But maybe you have an existing SMB file share, or maybe you use Panzura, or maybe you use Nutanix files, or maybe you use Nazuni, or maybe you use Azure files. Whatever it is, you want to connect that data platform to your Frame account. And that might require networking, depending on what kind of file solution you have in mind. Imagine you want to connect with an on-premises file server scenario, and you're using Azure. Then you want to set up a VPN gateway, or you want to leverage ExpressRoute. If you're running Frame workload machines on premises, then these machines are already in your data center. So it's easy to access existing file servers, domain controllers, printers, and things like that. And then the fifth step is you define capacity, you define a launchpad, and you just give people access to that launchpad. And they can launch apps and desktops on demand. So that's in essence what I just described is this slide, like the upcoming slides, what you see here. You pick the infrastructure, you select the region. We are able to support all the cloud regions the public cloud providers support, except China. So China is a different type of region, but except China, we are able to support like the cloud regions, the public cloud providers support as well. The beauty of Frame is that it's able to support both on-premises and public clouds from the same control plane, from the same service. The beauty of that is that you have choice. Depending on use case, depending on like the idea you have or the challenge you have, you want to maybe go for public cloud, and then Frame can just tap into Azure, Amazon, Google. Or maybe you have other work use cases where on-premises makes more sense because your data is on-premises, and maybe you have a stable use case pattern. Or maybe you have special legal regulation requirements where you want to use on-premises workload machines to run your apps and desktops. The beauty of Frame is that the Frame control plane is able to handle both. So if I go back to my admin interface, this one is running right now in Azure Australia. That's the one I just deployed. But if I go to this interface here, you see these are all the tenants are already deployed. If I go to, let's see, this one here, this one is a Nutanix ISV environment. Same interface, the same setup, the same configuration. You can just the same control plane, and the control plane is able to handle on-premises, this example, or public clouds, like the Azure example, or this one is AWS in Singapore. That's the beauty of Frame, built from day one as a real cloud service, multi-cloud and multi-tenancy in mind. Connect your identity provider, I already explained that. There's one click, you just enable Google, you fill in the details, you define what kind of roles you want to use, and then good to go. It's really, really, really simple to set up. Then you install your apps, I already explained that. The sandbox, the master machine, the template machine is deployed. When you install your application, Frame agent running inside the sandbox will detect that you are installing or you've installed an application, and then will pop up with the question, do you want to onboard the application? If you say yes, then the application will be listed in this list of applications here. And then you can connect, then you can define launchpads. You add these apps to the launchpad, and then you define through the identity system who can access the launchpad. So super simple. You connect your storage. I already mentioned one-click native integration with the cloud storage platforms. You can also drag and drop files from your local machine into the session. There's an upload or download function as well into the session. Of course, you can connect with existing file services and file shares, as I mentioned earlier. And then the fifth one, you define capacity, you define a policy, and you just, like I would say, connect with your end users, like, hey, you can log in, this is the URL, log in with your identity system, and then good to go. So super simple as well. I mentioned it, I think, twice, that Frame is multi-tenancy from day one. So we have an approach where you have customer, organization, and account level. And based on the structure you want to create, you can say, well, I want to use multiple different organizations or different accounts for across region, or maybe you want to split test and acceptance and production. Whatever the reason is, the beauty of this approach is that, yeah, you can use different levels, set up different identity systems on different levels, connect multiple infrastructure platforms, and even multiple subscriptions on different account levels. You can do analytics across different organizations from a customer entity perspective. So really flexible and really powerful if it's an enterprise, more complex environment, or if you're an MSP, managed service provider, or system integrator to support the variety of customers you want to support. Let's briefly talk about use cases. Just quickly, so bring your own device, easy. The only thing I need is a browser. We live and breathe. We spend many hours a day in a browser anyway, so why not just run apps with great user experience in a browser? There's no client server deployment needed. If you just want to deploy a client server application, you install the client in the sandbox, you publish a sandbox to production, you define capacity, for instance, 1,000 users, and then these 1,000 users will have access to this client server application, including high-end graphics, resource-intensive applications, including legacy applications, including in a Windows 10 Office 365 deployment. If you have classic applications which you don't want to be be part of this like modern Windows 10 deployment with a fast update cycle. Maybe you want to extract that. Frame works really well and integrates as well in Office 365 or Win 10. Maybe you want to support seasonal or short-term workloads. That's the beauty of a flexible and scalable platform, and also the beauty of leveraging public cloud to achieve that seasonality and to help with that seasonality. Maybe you're an ISV, you're an independent software vendor. You build your own Windows application, and you're struggling to deliver this Windows application as a service without rewriting the application to your clients, to your customers. There are many great examples in the Frame context where traditional Windows applications are, I'm not sure if that's a really an English word, like SaaS-ified. So without rewriting, just delivering this Windows application as a SaaS service to customers, and the Frame platform is able to do so. And finally, if you're in the Google bandwagon and you're focused on Google, you have Chrome OS and Chromeboxes and Chromebooks, and use Google for Enterprise for deployment and management, and use Google Suite for collaboration. Maybe, air quote, maybe, very likely you'll still have Windows applications for the next 1, 2, 5, 10 years, because many Windows apps are so embedded into the organization. Windows apps are here to stay for many, many, many years. And then you struggle, okay, how can I deliver these Windows apps to my Google environment? And the beauty of Frame is that we integrate directly with GCP. We have direct integration with Google Identity. We have direct integration with Google Drive. You can use Google File Stream client as well. We're able to pick up the Frame-powered application and bring this application into the Google shelf as well, so that the user just see the icon, click on the icon, and just launch the application instant. Alrighty, let's switch to a little bit a different topic, like the final topic in my let's see, 30-minute talk so far. Well on time, good on track. So Frame is desktop as a service, and maybe you wonder like, hey, well, I think it feels a little bit like VDI, like virtual desktop infrastructure, or like virtual apps and desktops. So that's why it's called like air quote versus, or VDI versus desktop as a service. Why is it air quote? Because there are different use cases for VDI and different use cases for desktop as a service. There are different vendors in both scenarios, and there's also overlap in vendors and solutions in both scenarios. So it's important to understand when to use VDI and when to use desktop as a service. I don't see it as versus. Yeah, there is some overlap, but there are also very clear differences between both approaches. And I'm not talking about the vendors and the products, like Nutanix is a vendor and Frame is a solution, a product. I'm more conceptually talking about VDI and desktop as a service. It's important to understand that if you're investigating DaaS, that you know, like, hey, DaaS fits well here and VDI or virtual apps and desktop fits well in the other scenario. It always starts, so my personal background is consultancy services for many, many years. It's always important to understand the bigger picture, to understand the use case, the ideas, the challenges, the problems. And if you have a clear view on that, then you can match that with, I would say, technology directions or functional, you want to map that with functional requirements and then technology directions. And then you talk about and investigate the products which are available in the market. In the context of VDI and DaaS, you can see it here, like left side is VDI, right side is desktop as a service. So on the VDI side, it's build your own internal skills. Staffing are required to procure, to design, to support, to update, to maintain a virtual app and desktop infrastructure. The update cycle is yearly or maybe like twice a year. It's tested, it's mature, it's proven. You can run it fully in your own data center. If there is no internet connection, the VDI platform itself just keeps on running. If you want to run VDI in a submarine, 6,000 miles across below surface, there's no connection required to, I would say, the public internet. It just keeps on running. It's an CAPEX consumption model. It's pretty fixed workload VM cost because that's what's running in your on-premises or co-location data center, and it's local region or maybe one or two data center or a couple of data centers depending on your setup, but not hundreds of regions like Amazon, Google, and Azure combined has. It's a moderate deployment time and fixed capacity as well. That's the capacity you have in place in your environment. On the other side is DaaS. I call it consume air quote VDI platform as a service. So the broker, the connection services, the database services, the remoting protocol, the capacity management, the image management, all these elements which are part of an air quote VDI platform is what you consume as a service. In the Frame context, we do weekly updates of sometimes bugs and sometimes new features, or both. So it's a weekly update mechanism. So it gets better every week. New functions, new features are added weekly. It relies on internet connectivity. So connecting to the control plane is over the internet. If you have established a session, then the internet connection from that perspective is not required anymore, but setting up a session that requires connectivity to the control plane, and that relies on internet connectivity. Of course, today, many things rely on internet connectivity, but desktop as a service is part of that as well. It's an OPEX, so more an operational expenditure model, or can be CAPEX, depending what you want to use. If you use public cloud, you want to often pay for consumption. If it's on premises, well, you need to pay for the equipment, for the Nutanix software on that on the equipment. So it's much more an like CAPEX approach or a mix of both. It's flexible from a workload perspective, especially if you use public cloud. A lot of flexibility there. Available in the region, as I mentioned. Leverage on-premises infrastructure when you use a hybrid cloud approach, like with Frame. It's really quick to deploy. Of course, every vendor will say that. I wear the Nutanix hat right now. So if I say it's quickly to deploy, you might think, well, sure, prove it, is one of my buddies would say, or what I would say, like prove it. Well, try it out yourself, and I will explain how you can do it yourself, and then you will see how different Frame is compared to other solutions in the space, and how easy it is to consume and to set up. And I wrote a blog post, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, doesn't matter. But VDI versus DaaS, how to choose. It's a good read. And in that same, if you click on my name in that blog post, you see a list of probably, let's see, 8 or 9 blog posts. And there are 2 other blog posts in the making, so you will see maybe a little bit more depending on when you click on the link. A lot of content around VDI and DaaS, how to be successful with DaaS, how Frame is different than other solutions. Yeah, different topics which are a great read if you're really focused on virtual apps and desktops, VDI and desktop as a service. So now you might be like interested, okay, how can we try Frame? How can we investigate it and see how Frame works? So there is a free 30-day unlimited user trial, which is great, and you can access that trial through nutanix.com/work-from-home. I work from home. You can see it here, and just sign up, and you'll get access to a Frame environment. There's no technology limit. All the technology is there. The only limit is 30 days. And it gives access to unlimited users of that Frame subscription. The thing you need to do is you need to bring your own infrastructure, so Amazon, Azure, Google, or if you're already using Nutanix HV, you can leverage that as well. There's also another option to test Frame, which is called Test Drive. And Test Drive is a 2-hour up and running Frame environment, where you can both from an admin perspective and from a user perspective just like jump into a running environment. It's your environment for 2 hours. After 2 hours, it will be just removed. And if you want to play around with NVIDIA GPUs during this 2-hour test drive, you can use the code FM19GPU, like I shared here on this slide. So you can that will unlock the NVIDIA GPU, and I would say just install like I don't know Google Earth as an example inside the environment. If you go to this website, you will see also a quick start guide, which is a great read to but to understand the basics of publishing a launchpad and defining users and things like that. So this is 2 hours. It's not the same as test drive. Test drive is 30 days, but this is a great start to just see Frame in action. No credit card needed, no infrastructure needed, just fill in the details, click apply. I think you need to fill in your mobile number for verification. You will receive a code, you fill in the code, and then you will have access to a running Frame environment in a matter of minutes. So good to check that as well. With that, that's the like the first part of the webinar, demos in the beginning of the session, and then more explanation about Frame, how Frame operates, VDI versus DaaS, and how to get started with Frame, all combined in, let's see, 41 minutes or 40 minutes. So hopefully it resonates and is helpful, and yeah, hopefully you've seen something new you've not seen before, and it hopefully is intriguing for you as well to test and to play with that. David, do we have questions or anything else you can jump in here?
We do, yeah, absolutely, Ruben. A really cool demo. I love seeing the product in action, and I'm just amazed how just fluidly, even over GoToWebinar, you can do all the 3D graphics.
Yep.
So very cool. I want to tell everyone that I've pasted the link to the Nutanix Frame test drive, as well as the work from home 30-day trial, and then also that special code that Ruben had on the slide there in the chat box in your GoToWebinar console. So you can just click on those if you want to try those out for yourself. I do want to do a couple poll questions here while we take some audience questions. So if you have a question about Nutanix Frame or Desktop as a Service, now is the time to ask it. There's a poll question on the screen that says, what's your cloud strategy with regards to workload VMs? So let's see, Ruben, first question that came in, Fred is asking, does this mean that the desktops are running remotely, but am I still able to print locally?
Yes, correct. So if I go back to my, let's see if I come back to my slide, not this one here, this demo environment. So let's see, no, this is not what I had in mind. This is what I had in mind. So this is my my running environment. So my demo environment, it disconnected because I was not doing anything, and to save on cost, the machine will disconnect the user after a certain amount of time. Of course, you can configure that. And if I just launch, let's see, launch Word and create a new document. Well, I don't need a new recipe, but you get the point. If I click on print, there are 2 options. I can print to like a network printer, nothing special here, but I can also print to Frame, like this one here. And if I click print, this print job will automatically print to my local printer. There it is. So my local printer is an HP NV5000. That's a printer I have in my home office. And if I hit print and I make it color or stapling or whatever the printer supports, I hit print. Well, I wouldn't print right now because my wife would think, hey, why is Ruben printing this job? But you get the point. It will just print. Yeah, exactly. And the same, as printing. If I would like to access local resources, I can do 2 things. I can just drop a file in this session, but I can also just use this option here, upload files, which I just did. And now the interface is my local. I'm using a Mac, so you see the Finder here. If I just like pick this one here, this is a small PNG. So if I click open, file is uploaded. You can see it here. Let me close this one here. We don't need it right now. And if I go to the Explorer, there's an option, there's a folder called Upload. That's where the PNG file is just stored. So this file was just like 2 seconds, 5 seconds ago on my local machine, and I just uploaded it to my session, and I can just use that as well. So yeah, very easy to connect with other resources, local resources as well. Yep.
Very nice, very nice.
Yep.
And that's not something people typically associate with the browser-based session. Yeah.
I'll just keep the session. Yeah, we'll keep this window open. Maybe there are other questions where I can just explain and demo how things work.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to forgo you doing the poll questions because I'd like to prioritize you showing off the product here. There's so many cool things to see. Next question, Fred is asking, how would something with complex licensing, such as Adobe Cloud products, work?
Yep. Good question, fair question. So like this product is using like Adobe Cloud. So so cloud licensing. What normally happens is then you fill in the details. And cloud licensing means that the Adobe product will connect with a license server running by Adobe. That's one method of licensing. I will explain the other one as well. And I just log in with my details, and it will checks out the license. And these user details are stored in the Windows user profile. Yeah, that's just how the application works and how Windows works. And Frame is able to keep that, to make that user profile persistent. It's baked into the Frame solution. It's called Frame Enterprise Profiles, and that makes it happen. The other element, if I launch like this one here, so the Inventor, this application will check out a license from a license server. So Autodesk can run in two modes: a license server like FlexLM mode, or like a cloud license mode. Cloud license, similar as the Adobe example, and the other example with the network license, it will just check out a license from the Autodesk license server, and that license server, of course, needs to be reachable. Likely will run on premises. That's the supported mode from an Autodesk perspective, and then Frame will just, or this application through Frame will just check out that license. So if networking is in place and the application can reach out to the license server, it will check out the license and good to go.
Okay, very nice.
Yep.
Another question, Rob is asking, what's the backend network requirement, and does it leverage public cloud provider VPNs?
So the first question was, what is the network requirement?
The backend network requirement, yes.
So let's see if I have a slide to explain that. I don't have, but then I will just explain. So there are, from a networking perspective, there are two paths. One path is what you see right now. So my front end, my end user device, in this case my MacBook, will communicate directly with a virtual machine. And that network is being used for the frame remoting protocol. If let me just launch another app where things are moving, like this one here, you can see the frame remoting protocol is consuming quite some bandwidth right now. Why? Because that's how I configured it for this setup. So it's 60 frames per second and up to 32 Mbps. If I have enough bandwidth, and I have fiber optics at home, so I have all the bandwidth available. That's one path of the network. If I lower for demo purposes, great to say, okay, I want to use 3 Mbps as max, or maybe like 1.9, also good. I just apply. You see that the frame rate, let me see if I can open this one. The frame rate is still high, so it's really fluent on my end. But if I move it around, it's a little bit more blurry, because that's one mode of the frame remoting protocol. So from a networking perspective, the frame remoting protocol works really well in LAN and WAN, and adapts based on network conditions, so bandwidth or latency or packet loss. That's one side of the network question. The other side of the network question is, like, if this network share is running, or this file server is running in my own data center, and this VM is running in an Amazon data center, which in this case is the case. So this one is running in Frankfurt, so AWS DE, Germany. If I want to access this file server over the internet to my own on-premises environment, that's where VPN gateway, direct connect, if it's AWS, or ExpressRoute, if it's Azure, kicks in. And because 9 out of 10 customers want to use their own subscription, you or your colleagues or your partner will set up VPN gateway, ExpressRoute, so that the Frame tenant, the Frame account, can communicate through the network with on-premises environment or with other networks in the public cloud. Nothing special Frame about that. Nothing special about that. It's just like networking basics, like Azure, Amazon, Google networking, or on-premises with VLANs and so on.
Okay, that makes sense.
There's another one to briefly, sorry to jump in. There's one to share as well. I would like to, that reminds me to something else I think is handy to share. I'm just scrolling to another slide to explain that one. Yeah, this slide. Let me go back to the deck. This one here. So imagine you want to support work from home. You can see my slide, right, David?
Yes.
Just checking. Okay, sorry for that. We also have an appliance called Streaming Gateway Appliance. It's just part of the Frame service, so no additional cost. And this Streaming Gateway Appliance is a reverse proxy sitting in a DMZ normally to make sure that these users from like who work from home can securely access these production machines through this reverse proxy. So that's what the Streaming Gateway Appliance will do. That means that this line, this traffic, this one is the Frame remoting protocol. And then if I launch an application and the application is running in the VM will communicate maybe with my backend server, my database, my Oracle, SQL, whatever the database is, or file server. That's the other part of the network traffic. And because it's already inside the data center, it's all data center traffic. And if it's in public cloud, again, then you need to set up VPN gateway, express route, direct connect, things like that. Yep.
Very nice. I'm fixated there by your speed test results. Those are pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that because this is on a VM?
Oh yeah. This machine is running in AWS, so that's why. Yeah, it's like I'm running in the Amazon backbone. That's why it's so super fast. Yep.
Wow.
And this machine, it's a workstation machine. So every vendor, every cloud vendor has GPU machines, has CPU machines. This machine has an NVIDIA T4, so Turing 4 GPU. Let's see, it's not a beefy machine. It has 4 CPUs, I think. 4 CPUs and 16 gigs of RAM. And there are different like instance types on Azure, on Google, and on AWS, and you just pay per hour for these machines. So this is a nice machine, especially the GPU is really really cool. And network is also really cool on this machine.
Very nice. Yep. Another question, Chris is asking, which browsers does it support?
Yep, all browsers, but not all browsers behave the same. As you probably already figured out on your local machine, if you use a classic Internet Explorer, yeah, it behaves different than a modern Microsoft Edge with Chromium or a Chrome browser. And the same applies to Frame. So with a modern browser, and especially with Chrome or with Edge, like the new Edge, we are able to unlock a lot of functionality like microphone, like this option here, or like audio playback with high fidelity audio. But in essence, all browsers can be used, but not all browsers behave the same. Modern browsers behave the best user experience and all the functionality we built for the platform.
Okay, important point there. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Not all browsers are alike.
Yep. Yeah, we support all browsers, so all browsers work. Especially if you just want to deploy an, I would say, like basic application, maybe an accounting application. I just make up an application, then it's fine. But if you want to deploy like Inventor, like I just did here, or you want to deliver like high-end graphics, or maybe something else, then the topic about browser support is a good topic. So also a good question. Yeah. You can also see here, by the way, that the user gets information about bandwidth. You can see here in the bottom, like on the, that it's like 3 orange bars. Well, because I limited the bandwidth. In this case, I'm able to change, but you can also define a policy that the user cannot change these settings, of course, but for demo purposes, it's fine. And the protocol automatically will like sort of rebalance. Will take a couple of seconds before it's back to green, or if I click here once, it will just rebalance and say, hey, how much bandwidth do I have and what's the latency, and then adapt the remoting protocol based on network conditions.
Yeah, I mean, my mind's still blown because back when I was deploying VDI, if someone wanted to deploy an application like this, we would just laugh about it. Like, yeah, no, that's never going to work. So this is just really amazing. Another question that came in, follow up from Chris, actually. How much work does it take to set up from end to end?
Yeah, I would say hours or days or weeks. That sounds a little bit strange, but let me explain. So hours, you can set up like a complete up and running environment in hours. I've done it myself, and also customers have done it themselves. I would say days when it's a little bit more complex with networking or with identity, things like that. or weeks. And that sounds strange, but I've seen it as well, especially when networking and identity are different groups in a larger organization, or I would say different groups in an outsourced organization. And then it's not really a technology conversation. It's more like different silos, communication. Maybe you have different cycles of updates, or where you can apply changes. So then it takes more time. But in essence, it's the design when Frame started is really the focus was to make it as simple as possible. So the 5 steps I explained earlier are really simple. Where the complexity is 3 things. Can be on the identity side. If you're not experienced, or if you don't have colleagues with like identity knowledge, that will add some time. The other element is on the application installation side. How much time does it take to install the apps? Well, that's the time it takes to install the apps. And the other element is the networking element. So imagine you run this on Azure, and you want to set up a VPN gateway from Azure to your on-prem environment. And imagine your firewall on premises is managed by someone else. And yeah, that takes also time and communication and things like that. But I would say simple. That's the starting point. It can be complex, or a little bit more complex and more time consuming than with the elements I mentioned. But still, compared to other solutions or other approaches, like really easy to consume and to set up. A funny story is not last weekend, like 2 weeks ago. I cannot share the name, but it's a US company, doesn't matter for now. And the IT department was so busy with like this whole I would say virus thing, coronavirus, COVID-19 thing. And CAO said, I really need to have a work from home solution ASAP. And what happened? He signed up for a Frame trial, like I just explained, on Friday. And he himself did set up Frame over the weekend. And Sunday afternoon, he had an up and running Frame account with his apps, fully documented. And then he handed over the Monday to his IT department. And he said, well, if I can set up Frame, then I'm sure that you can do that even better, and with other like elements included. That's a real story from a customer like 2 weeks ago, and this was like a CIO who set up Frame himself. There is no 6-day training course for Frame. There's online documentation. Like if you go to let's see, open a slide, docs.frame.nutanix.com. And you just search for like bring your own Azure. You will just see like the article, like bring your own Azure, what to do to set up your Azure subscription and connect it to Frame. Or what if you want to sign up for Frame for the trial? What do you need to do? So super simple and well documented here as well. Yes, and there are advanced topics like APIs or scripting framework, which I didn't cover at all. But for many use cases, that's not required. And if that use case requires specific APIs, which we have, or special things, then I would say just reach out, and happy to schedule a meeting and explain what Frame can do from that angle as well.
Excellent. I like that story. I like that CEO too. That's very compelling.
I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure when, but I'm pretty sure that story will hit the news somewhere. It's a great story. It's a real story. Yeah.
Yes, that should be a case study for Frame there.
Oh yeah. Yep. To be honest, other priorities right now.
Right.
It's so busy, but yeah, for sure.
Well, I know we're running out of time. Might want to cover this question from Marcus. He's asking how this compares to, for example, setting up Citrix VDI. I know you covered that to some degree, but I think you had a real nice slide that kind of compared the two.
Yeah, so it's a good question. Let's see where that one is. I finished to be honest, I finished a blog post. Let's see if I have the slide here. Yeah, I think so. I finished a blog post last week, 2 weeks ago. It's not live yet. And I also wrote a white paper, and it's not live yet. So, but stay tuned next couple of weeks.
Okay.
But that topic is addressed in that blog post. It's not a feature-to-feature comparison. That is possible, but not in a blog post, and that requires much more context before before you can do a feature comparison between like Amazon or VMware and Frame as an example. But this one, like VDI, air quote versus DaaS, is a good one. And Frame, like one thing I would say, that Frame is the only born in cloud from day one solution, which is multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. All the others did not start as a cloud service, or are specifically focused on public cloud or single public cloud only. For instance, Amazon Workspaces is a cloud service, true, but is only Amazon cloud, and Amazon Workspaces specifically is only persistent desktops and not non-persistent pool desktops. And the article and the white paper I wrote, which is not published yet, but maybe you watch the recording or listen to the recording a little bit later, I would say take a look at this blog post link, click on my name, and you will see a list of blog posts. I'm pretty sure that blog post I just mentioned will pop up soon, or maybe already popped up, depending on when you listen to this webinar.
Okay, will that be on the Nutanix?
I would say reach out to me if you want to have more details. Happy to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we're running out of time here. Before we go, I want to announce the prize winner of the $300 Tango gift card. That's going to Marcus Matthews of Texas. Congratulations.
Congrats.
There's a number of questions we didn't have time to get to. Lots of good questions rolling in, so I apologize for that. Ruben has so generously put his email address up there on the screen. If you want to reach out to him with your question, feel free to do that. Ruben, it's been really great having you on. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks for hosting, and see you next time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love the live demos. Really cool stuff. Obviously, the audience did as well. Lots of questions, lots of interest coming in. I want to remind everyone, don't forget about the 2 links that I pasted in the chat there for the Nutanix Frame test drive and the Nutanix Frame work from home 30-day trial. Make sure you check those out. Thank you everyone for attending, and thank you to Nutanix for supporting today's event. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.